So it's 4 o'clock now. All right, you're good to go, Charlotte.
Okay.
We'll just wait for a minute here just to see as the participants roll in here.
Do you know how many are there now?
Yep, there was 73.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And just as everyone's coming into the webinar, if you want to put in the chat where you're watching from.
All right, so we have Burnaby, Parksville. Awesome. Victoria.
Okay, so we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to our Women in Leadership Career Development webinar in collaboration with iWIST. I'm Charlotte Dibb, and I'm part of the Victoria chapter of Women in Leadership. And this session is all about how we can build bridges into STEAM, be it through micro-credentialing, reskilling, and many other options, all as a way for women to advance or pivot their careers into STEAM. And I'm incredibly excited to introduce our 4 amazing panelists. We have Patrice Key-Rhone, who is the Global Director of IBM Corporate Social Responsibility, Claire Skillen, who's the Board Chair at iWIST and President of Seascape Solutions, Inc. We have Chris Yu, who's the co-founder and CEO of Renzozen Tech School, and Donna Damian, Professor of Software Engineering at UVic. So for today's event, we've created questions for our panelists, and then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. And we've got Jessica Craig, who's monitoring the chat for questions. So if you have any, just pop them in the chat and they will be answered at the end of the session. And this presentation will be recorded and uploaded to our website after the event. And next, here in Victoria, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples, and to acknowledge the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Cosapsan peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. And next, I want to briefly introduce Will. So we are the Victoria chapter of the Women in Leadership Foundation, which was founded back in 2001 by Maya Canagan. Maya founded the foundation to showcase role models and to help more women become leaders. And today there are now 6 chapters in different cities across Canada, and Will delivers programs that bring women together to develop their leadership skills and create positive change in the future of women's leadership. And you can head over to our website at womeninleadership.ca, where you can learn more about upcoming events and our mentorship program. And now I'd like to hand it over to Claire Skillen to introduce iWIST.
Thanks so much, Charlotte, and good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this evening. Island Women in Science and Technology was founded in 2011, and one of our core focuses is to build a trusted community of women in STEM. And so part of how we do this is through a series of events, whether that be networking, even out for a hike, panels, workshops, and a key part of who we are is partnering with similarly valued organizations like Will, like IBM, like UVic, like Renzoku, to amplify the voices and encourage more women to explore STEM, explore STEAM. And we look forward to connecting with you. One way to connect with us is to check out our website at www.iwist.ca, and you can learn a bit more about us there on how to get involved and some of the events that we have coming up. Thank you.
And I'd like to hand it back over to Heather to introduce the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just go around the table and let each of the panelists just do a bit of an introduction of who they are and kind of how they got within their leadership journey. And then we'll dive into the panelist questions, and you'll get to know a little bit more of their respective organizations and how they're really contributing to the STEAM field. So why don't we start with you, Patrice?
Hey everyone, I'm so happy to be here today. Happy to be in front of this audience. Patrice Key-Rhone, Global Director of Employee Giving and Volunteerism. I work in the corporate social responsibility field. Prior to joining IBM, I spent 20 years at AT&T headquarters working in a variety of different areas. The bulk of my career was in corporate compliance and regulatory. The majority of my career was spent on the technical side, working with the FAA and the FCC with satellite licensing, with a team of engineers, and with satellite licensing and cell tower spectrum. And so the bulk of my career was spent within that regard, and then transitioned over into corporate social responsibility, building stellar programs for workplace giving and volunteerism. So kind of an untraditional path, but I was able to really navigate kind of going from that technical career path and kind of going into kind of the problem solving, technical, and just really going into building programs for corporate social responsibility. So I'm excited to talk more about it later in today's call, but I'll kick it over to the next panelist.
Thanks so much, Patrice. I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting Patrice a while back. She did a keynote for one of our school boards in BC, and just hearing her path and her journey, I thought she would just be so perfect for this conversation. So thank you so much. You're coming all the way from Texas, dialing in and joining us. So really appreciate you setting some time aside to just share with our community here today. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And Dana, over to you.
Sorry, did you say Dana?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So thanks so much for inviting me. I also feel I'm delighted and so honored to be joining alongside these distinguished panelists today, experienced. I have been in Victoria for 20 years. This summer, we celebrated 20 years. In Canada for about 27. And I came as a ESL student, if you wish. I did my master's and PhD in Calgary. So I've been one of those students who come across the world to follow their dreams of graduate school and a better life. And I have learned along the way that, following your passion, but also working with others. So the value of networking, value of mentorship, kept me fueled to contribute and really enjoy software engineering and technologies. And after so many years at UVic now, I have created a program called Inspire, STEM for Social Impact, which brings my passion to the field, software engineering, but also engineering in general, as well as experience in working with multicultural teams, people who come with different backgrounds and experiences, but that working in diverse teams, they leverage each other's strengths and backgrounds and knowledge and contribute to fantastic technologies that we build nowadays. So I now have an entire line of research that looks at the relationship between diverse and inclusive teams and the performance of the teams in building engineering products that are inclusive. So today I'll be speaking from an academic perspective and how my journey had led me to where I am, but also how we can support other students enjoy the field of engineering and science and engineering and the possibilities at UVic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know you came highly recommended by both Claire and Julie from UVic. So really, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with our community today. And Chris, let's go to you next.
Hi, thank you. Like the other panelists, I feel honored to be a part of this group. And yeah, so my path into STEAM is probably quite similar to what we're talking about. I'd spent the greater part of my life, over 25 years, working in the nonprofit space. And I get bored easily. So I also do some project management, and I started a couple companies along the way. But back last fall, a friend of mine asked if I would have any interest in starting a tech school with him. So at the time, I knew absolutely nothing about tech. I liked it. I knew that it involved gadgets. I like gadgets, but that's about all that I knew. So for the greater part of the last year, we've been developing a tech school that basically we want to train web developers like a trade. So as opposed to going to a traditional institution where it would be in a classroom and heavy kind of on theory and foundational work, we start with skills, and very similar to what we'll talk about in micro-credentialing, and giving people opportunities to learn specific things and developing competencies in those skills. And we run a very small tech school, so it gives us the opportunity to provide entry places for people coming from other careers, and provide safe, inclusive spaces for people to learn and enter into STEAM. So excited to be a part of that, and excited to be a part of you as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And I know your partnership with iWIST, again, through Claire, came highly recommended. So again, really appreciate you carving out the time to be here with us today. And last but not least, Claire, over to you.
Thanks very much, Heather. Where do I describe my background? I have a fairly eclectic one. And I guess you could say I started out in the letter S in the science side of things. So my undergraduate degree is actually in physical geography and resource management. So I specialized in applied climatology. So I took a non-traditional path into tech, because I had an eclectic background. I started off wearing hip waders and a backpack GPS, doing stream mapping, and hopefully I didn't fall in the river. Thankfully I didn't. And worked on some community development projects in Central America, and that took me into government in a variety of different roles. So I worked in both social and resource policy and in project work. And then after a role as a business ops and contracts for BC Hydro, I had an opportunity to transition into tech as a business analyst for the first time, and jumped on a rather entertaining and yet steep learning curve into the world of tech. And I've enjoyed the ride ever since. I currently work as a senior IT change lead on contract with Ministry of Health. And I'm super grateful to be in my 4th year as board chair for iWIST, and being a voice out there to encourage women and girls to explore these fields. There's so much possibility here, and I'm grateful to be part of such a great panel, and to be partnered with Will on this event today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, Claire and I met a few years back through an iWIST event, IBM. We sponsor iWIST, and I had the pleasure of meeting her. And we thought one day we have to collaborate on something. And then we started talking about events and what could we do. And then here we are, you know, a few years later, diving into this discussion on really how we can build bridges. And, you know, I think it goes beyond just STEAM. We're focusing on STEAM today, but really that's what our organizations are all about, our opportunities in building those bridges. So I guess quickly, I'll just do a quick intro on myself too. So my name is Heather Van Munster. I'm a mother of 2 young boys. I reside here in beautiful British Columbia in Victoria. I volunteer as the co-chair for Women Leadership Victoria chapter alongside Julie Potter, who's with us here tonight, and our board members, Jessica Craig and Charlotte Dibb, a very small but mighty team. And I work full-time for IBM. I have the pleasure of serving all 60 school boards across the province of BC, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you this evening. So, you know, we often talk about, and we hear about the barriers and the blocks, and, you know, the intent for the discussion this evening is really to highlight the access and the opportunity, and how there's so many wonderful organizations that are out there that truly want to help you to help make the world a better place. So I hope at the end of this that each of you walk away feeling inspired and empowered, and to see a new way forward, whether you are a mid-career professional and you're wanting to pivot in your career, or you're a student looking for a path to get career ready. So with that, let's dive into the discussion. So our board and I will come up with a handful of questions for our panelists this evening. And by all means, we want you, the audience, to chime in with your questions. You know, really, we're volunteering our time, we're putting this together to help you. So if there's a question, anything you want to run by us, just please put it in the chat. We have, like I said, a series of questions we'll walk through, but we'll certainly queue up all of your questions to be answered at the end. So please chime in throughout the call, and we'll make sure that they do get answered before we wrap up today. All right, so first question, why don't we start with you, Claire? So just if you could tell us what your organization offers in regards to micro-credentialing, reskilling, upskilling, et cetera, as a way to build that bridge into STEAM, and how does one take advantage of these opportunities?
I was focusing in this arena is more to provide awareness of all the amazing organizations that are out there that provide these services. So that can include schools like Renzoku, can include offerings that are through UVic, for instance. It's also part of the role that we can play as well is to raise awareness through panels, discussions, and information, and through networking events, because oftentimes opportunities that come up are discovered a lot through networking. And so iWIST serves as a wonderful vehicle through which to have those conversations that can expand the knowledge of opportunity in terms of reskilling. And how do you take advantage of those opportunities? I'd say, yeah, have the conversations, do some research, go have a conversation with Chris, go have a conversation with Dana, and talk about and get some advice on how to bridge in. I'd also say get really present to, you know, what makes you what lights you up from the inside out, and what your path might look like based on what those passions are. So that'll be a start anyway.
Yeah, no, lovely. We're very fortunate here on the island to have your community and all the people that serve it. And, you know, you're certainly so great at making sure that your events are posted and known about them. So those that are listening in, you know, we do have a little digital handout that we're going to send out at the end with links to all of these wonderful organizations. So if you're going, oh, what was it? How do I spell that? We will have the links them. So by all means, please sign up to get the newsletter so you are in the know of when these events are happening. All right, let's go to you next, Chris. Same question.
Yeah, so I think I found, personally speaking, when I was switching over and into doing something else, and I think the people that I talked to that are switching mid-career also, two sort of things kind of pop into mind, and they really don't have anything to do with hard skills, and they're probably more feelings that we have. And one of them is when we jump into something new, we feel this sense of self-doubt, right? Like I'd spent my whole life doing something that I thought, you know, I was kind of good at. And so, you know, I think when we move mid-career into something else, whether we're moving from sort of caring over our families or from a different career or different field, we're moving from being kind of an expert into something that, you know, we kind of doubt ourselves, a lot of imposter syndrome. And then we kind of lose our community as well. So the people that I used to hang out with, I no longer hang out with. I've got a new group of friends. And so I didn't know how I was going to fit in. So at Renzoku, those are two things that kind of come top of mind for us, is we're wanting to build confidence for people. And the way that we do that is through teaching specific small skills. We would call them micro-credentials, which in, you know, there's a lot of different definitions for that. And depending on, you know, I think these days we're narrowing in on some things that kind of are common to what micro-credentials would be. They're, you know, online courses, or they're badges, or small courses that companies might offer, but they're specific skills. So, you know, we might say to somebody, like, if you're going to something new, be really, really good at Excel. You can be the Excel expert, right? You might not know about a whole bunch of other things, but you can be the Excel person, or you can be the CRM person. And there are some things that are just really great to be proficient in. And so we try to teach those skills, as I said, like a trade. We develop competency within those skills. And so we have a variety of different people that join us. We have some that are out of high school and sort of the traditional post-secondary education institutes and stuff are difficult for them. Class sizes are too big or other things. We have someone that graduated from college and people that have been through university. They're come to us sort of complementary to education they've done. And we have one woman who joined us after being a nurse for a number of years. And so she's learning something completely new. And, you know, it's really great to watch these people take some of their life experience and pick up another little credential and build that confidence and find some belonging in our school. So those have been exciting things for me to be a part of.
Awesome. I love this whole concept of these kind of bite-sized pizzas to make these big moves that really will make a big impact on your life. It doesn't need to start out so big. You can take these little bite-sized things along the way to build up, right? So what your organization offers, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, and Patrice, let's go to you next.
Awesome. At IBM, we have a signature program called IBM Skills Build, and you can find it at www.ibmskillsbuild.org. It's on the pamphlet as well. But this is one of our signature education and workforce development programs that's targeted at many different types of learners. So we have a path for the learner experience. We have a path for educators. We also have a path for adult learners. And the really fantastic thing is there's learner paths. So we really want to take that learner. We want to reskill, we want to upskill, but we have commitments in that. We want to skill 30 million learners by 2030. So we have internal commitments with that. We have external commitments with that. But we've really made a huge commitment to ensure that we can take communities of learners, and we want to be able to put, the trust and transparency behind getting those learners from every single community, putting some, rigor behind that learning process, and ensuring that we can ensure that there's competencies, there's skill sets, there's training, there's development, that we have, mentors behind this program. But we really want to ensure that we can put out a program that our learners, our educators, the teachers really feel supported through the workforce and education development program. So for those that are out on the web, feel free to check it out. It's at www.skillsbuild.org, but it's a really robust program where we're really putting a lot of different programs together, from cybersecurity to just different types of different learner paths. But we really just trying to put, a lot of different ways for different types of learners to come to skillsbuild.org and be able to reskill, upskill, learn different career paths, find different things that they may be interested in, especially if they're mid-career and they want to learn a new skill. Check out skillsbuild.org and figure out if this is something that can really just inspire, and intrigue, their interests.
Yeah, absolutely. That program, is one of many, but it holds me as a proud IBMer. To work for a company that puts that much behind a program like this and those kind of commitments, it really does speak volumes. And knowing that, it can be like from twinkle to twilight, like it's for any age, it's for anyone. Talk about like inclusivity. We want everyone to come in and just further their own path on their own time, right? It's like you can have your job, you can be a parent, and you can also do this on the side. So it's a wonderful, wonderful program. Thank you so much for sharing, Patrice.
I am slightly biased, but I will have to admit we have hundreds of partners, and the part of the reason why I believe, in my biased opinion, why it's a really fantastic program is because we have hundreds of partners. So the content creation is coming from experts. So we don't have to be the subject matter experts in every single thing. So the content creation is coming from experts in many different competencies, many different skill sets, so that we can ensure that we're meeting our learners where they are, we're meeting the educators where they are, so we can ensure that we can really truly offer packages and learning suites so that we can truly ensure that we can meet the community where it's at. So it's a really nice package that we're just like continuing to push updates out to. And again, we're pushing it out with the assurance that we can meet a 2030 commitment, but we're pushing it out in a way that it's going to continue to grow, that it's sustainable. It's not something that we're just doing now and we're going to hit this 2030 goal or 2030 commitment, and then it's like, all right, well, it's done. We've got it done. We really want to ensure that we have this, I call it the 7-generation mindset. So we're thinking about 7 generations down the line. Can it evolve 7 generations from today? And when it evolves that 7 generations, can it evolve 7 more generations from that 7 generations? That's what true sustainability is really about, is does it meet the 7-generation rule? So just kind of sharing my, my inspiration behind kind of how I think about program development and how we truly develop programs that are sustainable, that's going to grow. And we're not just thinking about tomorrow, but we're really thinking about the next generation of leaders that we really want to be a part of our education, our STEAM process that's going to really lead the next generation of companies that's, that we're all trying to build, that, that Chris is putting his school together. I was fascinated. I was like, man, there's some really like great people on this panel. I was like inspired. that's what we're really trying to build right now through all of these programs. And it's going to take like all of our programs, put together to really ensure that we can really meet the demands of the next generation of leaders that are coming.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much. And getting those the credentials or the badges that you get when you complete the courses, those are super cool too, because they are recognized globally. You can add them to your LinkedIn. I mean, the whole process too, it's rewarding when you achieve something too. So thank you so much again.
I think it's more than the badge though. Those badges used to be the little badge, but now that badge, that credential really does mean something. You spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, you learned something. When you earn that badge, it means something. You put it on your resume. It means something to a lot of companies. It's more than just a badge. And I think that those badges mean something. So, that's really when we think about like those micro degrees and we think about, the micro credentialing, now it really does have meaning. And so back in the day, it was just like, oh, it's just a micro degree. But now when we think about that mid-career professional that goes and gets a cybersecurity badge, certificate, degree, it has a lot of meaning. And those are the individuals you want to seek out. They may have spent 20 years doing, IT security and Cisco, and they've got all the different acronyms for, Microsoft, but when they go get that cybersecurity, micro credential, that means something. So
yeah, absolutely. It holds weight for sure. And I see what you said, Claire, there, like a key to open doors, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, Dana, let's go to you next.
Yeah, let's go to you, Vic. So in a way, it's good that I came as a fourth speaker, having heard from your initiatives, because I think I'm putting together what you guys have already accomplished outside you, Vic. The opportunity for people to develop new skills in certain projects in a certain community. But I'm looking from the perspective of working with students at UVic. So this may not be relevant to those who are mid-career and looking for education outside UVic because the Inspire program is on campus. At UVic in general, you may be familiar with the continuing education program, and we have quite a few courses for tech, web development, for example, data mining and machine learning. But if you're not interested in that more traditional education style, Inspire offers is really built around the concept of experiential learning in projects that are community driven with a social impact. And the key sauce, if you wish, is the network that I'm trying to build around these projects. They would be the reason that some students, hopefully first and second year female students or other representatives from minorities would get interested in the social impact notion of the project, but then they stay within, we build a network and they stay and we build a community of practice. And then every year we help other students coming in, and then this mentorship from the students as well as from industry sponsors and partners. So the projects it's a 5-year program, and as I said, the projects aim to address a social problem. We have community partners who have shown interest in working with our students. The projects last 4 months, and they involve teams of 4 students. So the skills that students develop are really working in teams, addressing a real open-ended problem with a real community stakeholder, and leveraging some training that we provide, web development, project management, but most useful is design thinking and co-creation of a solution in collaboration with the end users and the partners, the stakeholders in the problem that they try to address. And I mentioned that because there is badges that we offer to students offered by IBM training skills programs in design thinking and co-creation of solutions for community impact. So design thinking, just in a nutshell, teaches students or participants to use empathy in addressing a problem with end users, putting yourself in the shoes of those that you're trying to impact their lives. And that has been the most fulfilling experience in watching the students go through this summer. We had our first cohort, we had 6 projects. The technical development in the project that they complete is, if you wish, something that they learn very easily. and they may have had certain skills taught in other courses. But understanding the problem and the context in which their solution is being implemented is the challenging and the beauty of the projects they work in. So for example, we have a project that worked with the Greater Victoria Coalition to End Homelessness here in Victoria. And the need that they try to address is giving support to women who flee home because of domestic abuse. It was interesting because they came with the idea, oh, we're just going to build an app and provide resources to these women, to go find a job and find shelter and find others to support them. And they quickly realized that most of these women don't even have phones, never mind something to access these resources. So through the design thinking approaches and the coaching that they've got in our program, they pivoted to a solution that was more appropriate to them. And they realized that helping shelters and streamlining their workflows and the technologies they have, they were actually better to help these women. So in a way, it was an indirect support they gave to these women that they originally wanted to help. The other project I'd like to mention, and I won't keep you too long on this one, is a success story in helping youth cope with climate change anxiety and find some action, in a small way, but hopefully they become the leaders of tomorrow in fighting climate changes. And developing an app for teenagers is not easy because although they use phones every day, they are distracted by so many other applications that they use. So this development team worked a lot with youth in school, middle school students and high school students, understanding what features of an app that gives them awareness of carbon footprint and strategies, what app would actually they adopt. So the adoption question had been important to them, not as much the development of the tool. Again, that's easy. It is what would make that useful in the population of interest, in this case, youth. And that the application is currently being deployed in 3 high schools in town. So we're hoping to actually have this used. So again, to wrap it up, those who are interested in getting some exposure to experiential learning projects different than what we usually teach in our courses at UVic, in the collaboration with a community partner, and then be part of a network of like-minded individuals for passion for sustainability and hopefully science and engineering, would find use and benefit and inspire.
Beautiful. Wow, an inspiring program to say the least. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, we'll go to the next question here. So the next question is, in each of your opinions, how can employers widen opportunities to attract diverse talent? And Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think it's important to, I was brainstorming this question and I came up with like a whole page full of different things. So I'm going to just pick a couple. I'm sure there's great ideas from others. But for us, I think starting early is really important. Just from day one, building a culture where with people that are different than we are. Like I think we all value diversity, but when you think about what diversity means, it means there are people that don't think like you naturally think, and there are people that are going to disagree with how we naturally think. And so finding people and attracting a team for us with that reflected some diversity was important. So I think building that culture where people of different points of view, people that think differently, look differently than we do, and giving them opportunity to speak and have input into the formation of policy and program and everything right from foundational level is important. And I think the second thing I would say is just, we often say to our kids or to others that nothing in our life is ever wasted. But, I think often when we apply for jobs, we look at job descriptions and they're very specific to the job, but they don't often, I can think of a whole bunch of things in my own personal life that I've done, but it seems wasted in terms of that job description. And so I think one of the things that we can do to attract diverse talent also is to validate those other experiences that we have in our lives, the other things that we've done that are significant, and maybe teach us things like, dealing with deadlines and dealing with pressure and, multitasking or those kinds of things, because we do them all the time. Maybe not in a workplace, but once we can start to think about the other experiences in our lives as value to what we add to our jobs, our careers, and other things, I think we develop confidence in who we are, and I think that just makes a better employee and a better team.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree that, foundationally, it does start with the culture. And when I see job postings, it's like, oh, we have a lot of work to do to support industry to help modify and adjust those job descriptions, because I feel like we are pushing away. We're not able to attract talent the way they're written. And, it's unfortunate because, the employee misses out and the employer misses out simply on that, so yeah, thank you for your input there. Claire, let's go to you next.
Thanks, Heather, and wholeheartedly agree, Chris. Culture is really foundational to a lot of this, and validating those external experiences is huge. I mean, think about somebody who coaches a sports team, or who's maybe trained for a triathlon or something else, or maybe they've written their first novel. There's so much that can translate over. To add to what you were saying, Heather, as well, is from a job description standpoint, is look at and take a close look at how bias shows up in the language in postings. And I would add further to that not everybody experiences job interviews differently. I see interviews as a way of telling my story, but how I might tell my story might be different from somebody else's. So how can we build in an adequate amount of flexibility into how we connect with people and connect opportunities so that they can share the best parts of themselves? And as you say, Heather, there's that connection and opportunity to bring someone in, as Chris pointed out, who thinks differently than you, that comes from a different perspective. And that's where you have that competitive advantage that really is linked to diversity in the workplace. I also think when we consider some of the requirements for postings, I often find that, years of experience seems to come up quite a bit. Maybe we can get a little more granular on that and perhaps thus reflect upon some of the benefits that micro-credentialing has to offer, right? Because things don't always span in years, right? So maybe there's a way to, have a growth series positions where you bring someone in that's 6 months and you grow them and you test them as they test you, right? And so there's an opportunity for mutual fit and assessment. Say, hey, can I grow here? Is this the good fit for me? Is this a good fit for the organization? I think there's lots of different paths that we can take. And so it's not always about, you need 5 years. Well, maybe it's maybe you can start off with 6 months and grow into those 5 with us as an organization, because you think about the IBM Skills Lab, there's so many resources there to build people up. I think too, the more needs to be done when we consider foreign credential recognition. There's such a barrier to that in Canada still. I don't know what it's like in the States, Patrice. In Canada, it's still such a delay in recognizing foreign credentials, and sometimes it dissuades people from considering opportunities because they come to this country with a different master's degree or different PhD, and they're told, in some cases by industry or others that, oh, you have to go get another one because we don't recognize it here, which say, wow, that's a lot. So maybe there's an opportunity. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Sharon. Maybe there's an opportunity for educational institutions and industries to partner and on creating a bridging program. Say, hey, okay, you've got a master's degree from another place. That's amazing. What can we do to support, the addition perhaps of some Canadian content and methodologies so that your journey doesn't have to involve another, master's degree, or maybe it needs to only involve a micro-credential or a different kind of bridging program to bring people in. I think that's one of the other blockers that some can face when considering different opportunities. And I noticed Sharon Summerfield there has dropped in a link to a good resource there we can check out where some of that type of work is happening. So thank you for that. A couple thoughts from me.
Great, thank you, Claire. And Dana, let's go to you next.
So it's hard to add to what's been said, because culture is such a big attractor, especially of diverse teams, diverse talent. What I found in my academic works is creating opportunities for the projects with social impact. Research does show that women and girls, especially at early age, are attracted, not as much by technology, but they're attracted by projects with social good. They want to help. It's probably that nurturing trait that we have in us. And then, the upskilling can happen in parallel, or that's a Trojan horse to preparing these girls or women to complete such projects. So I think that, it's hard for me to speak about organizations because I don't hire in organizations, but any projects where diverse talent can get involved and have that social impact would be meaningful. And join teams and join projects such that have that goal. I think that's what I found useful. And other than culture, like that's why I want to create a network through Inspire, where everybody sees the power of diversity, and then they want to join in an inclusive environment because they feel empowered. It is any motivator, any factor that results in empowerment. And working on impactful projects in communities and in our society creates that empowerment as well. I think would be a great contributor to attracting diverse talent.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, beautiful contribution there. Thanks, Jenna. And I know, Patrice, that a lot was said, but if there's anything you'd like to add on that as well.
So I'm going to agree with what everyone said, and I'm going to try to keep my answer very, very short, because I'm going to agree with what everyone said because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I am going to put a small disclaimer and say, in my opinion, to ensure that these are my views and my opinion, because I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer because there's so many answers. And I'm going to be politically correct to say, in my opinion, I think employers can widen opportunities by widening to attract diverse talent. If they just widen those opportunities to attract the diverse talent, they will attract the diverse talent. The first thing that I go to is algorithm bias. And so you can be as jazzy as you want, but you can't beat the algorithm. And so there's just like the first thing I go to is the algorithm bias. And so you can come up with all these great ideas and you can be as jazzy, as smart, your resume can be the best. You can go pay thousands of dollars, but you can't beat the algorithm. You absolutely cannot. So I'm just going to just leave it at that. And so if employers want to attract diverse talent, and if they want to cast a wide net, they need to cast a wider net to attract that diverse talent if they truly want it.
Well said. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. All right, I think we've heard from everyone that question. We'll go to the next one now. All right, so most employers, they want experience. So after an individual, does the upskilling and micro-credentialing, et cetera, they're making that transition into the STEAM field. How can one obtain some experience to put on that resume that they need to submit? And what tips do you have for an individual landing that first job, whether you are a mid-career professional going into STEAM or a student new to the field? And let's start with you, Claire.
So building experience, I think, can take a few forms. And sometimes that can involve, volunteer work outside of work where there's capacity to do so. Volunteer with iWIST. We are recruiting right now. Sorry, not sorry for the plug. Connect with organizations like Inspire, look for opportunities like that. There's so many volunteer organizations that are doing amazing work that can help build that experience that, Chris was talking about earlier, where there's lots and lots of work that translates over. I think too, there's chat with employers about looking at temporary opportunities or bridging opportunities as well. Because again, sometimes there's an opportunity for employees to trial one another, and maybe that's a 6-month temporary assignment. Maybe there's rotational opportunities. When I worked with BC Hydro as a manager / professional in development, I had an opportunity to rotate around for 3 or 4 different areas of the organization as an MPID. until I found an area that fit best for me. And that was from hydroelectric generation to, you know, to transmission and distribution to, you know, power smart and a number of different areas. So I think there's an opportunity for collective creativity and program design between both the employee and the employer to provide those bridges and provide a varied experience so that there's a fit for both parties.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And Chris, let's go to you next.
Thank you. I think there's lots of online material these days. There's, you know, YouTube, Udemy, Coursera. There's tons of online material. A lot of it is great. I think it's actually more about navigating through the plethora of material out there than it is kind of trying to find it, because you can find it, like if you Google something, you'll have pages and pages of it. So I think part of the key is finding somebody to help you navigate what's out there. So I think it's starting to network early, finding friends or building your network of people that are doing what it is that you think you might want to be doing, and making friends, learning from them, sharing with them, and then slowly just kind of picking up some of those self-learned things. Take some online courses, build personal projects, and start building a portfolio. I know in speaking about web development, software development, companies, when you apply, what they're looking for is, well, what have you done? Can you show us your portfolio of work? And that portfolio of work can be your own personal website. It can be something you designed, a game you designed for your kids. It can be anything. But getting stuff into, for us, we use GitHub. For getting stuff into GitHub is so important. And that's going to be your online resume. That's going to be the thing that will sell you is what you've done. And they want to look through and see, you know, how did you develop it? What were your thinking? What was your thinking behind it? Why did you choose that language or framework? And all of that applies. So yeah, I would say find an online course, find somebody to help you navigate, and then start building up that portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that network piece is key, especially within someone in that industry that you're trying to go into, to see how you can articulate that experience that lends itself well into that industry, right? So appreciate that, Chris. Let's go to you, Patrice.
Yeah, I echo what Claire and what Chris just said. I think it depends on what area you are in, what where you're at in life. If you're a student, definitely you want to leverage your networks. You definitely want to volunteer to take on some project work, either with some of those networks, with some organizations. You want to volunteer. You want to take on some of those projects so that you have something to put on a resume, so that you can kind of put yourself out there, also so that you can build the network and put yourself out there, so that if you're either looking for employment or if you want to put yourself out there to take on something, you know, maybe garner more experience, build trust. That would be great if you're a student. If you're already working and you're wanting to leverage, maybe transitioning into a different role, then maybe leverage your BRGs or ERGs. That's extremely critical, because a lot of times they have volunteer positions where you can take on volunteer roles. You can learn new skills, add them to your resume that will help you transition into internal positions within the company. A lot of people underestimate what you can learn internally in the company that will help you transition into a new career. Many companies will help you train, reskill, upskill internally through their own internal learning portals that will help you train, develop, and skill into internal positions. If you're a person that's just looking to just change industries, then absolutely you want to look at, micro-credentialing. You want to look at something completely different that's external than your employer. You want to take on something that maybe that's a lot less costly, that doesn't require maybe a lot of time, maybe something you can do when you get home, maybe you have a family. So you want to do something that's on your own time that you can do, maybe build a network, maybe join a network, maybe it's something that you can get those credentials so you can change career. Maybe you're, mid-career career, maybe you've spent many years in a different profession and you're wanting to, find something new, find a new passion, start over. Maybe you are post-retirement and you want to start over. So I really think it depends on where you're at in your walk of life in terms of what experience you want to gain. So if you're a student, it's one thing. If you're starting a career and you're just trying to figure it out, leverage your BRG group or ERG group. If you're mid-career and you want to get some credentials, take advantage of that, or leverage your internal professional portal because everything in there is free, everything. Also take advantage of your employer's tuition reimbursement program and go get their degree for free and let the company pay for it. And then if you just want something completely different, that's where your micro credentialing will come in. It's going to be less costly. You can learn a new degree, get you a degree, get you credentials, badging, learn something completely different, and maybe even change industry and jobs and be more fulfilled and inspired. So.
Well, great advice. I love that you brought up the volunteer piece, and certainly, navigating internally how you can also volunteer as well. I think that's critical to getting that experience. And I think that speaks volumes that you're willing, you're a go-getter, you're going to go out and you're going to support and you're here to serve. And yeah, thank you so much for highlighting that. I think it's really important. And Dana, last but not least on this question.
Yeah, again, a lot has been said. So what I wanted to add, in addition to the power of networking and opportunities of experiential learning in general. So if you're a student, either come to Inspire, because we have experiential learning projects and everything you do can go on your CV and in your GitHub repository and your LinkedIn profile. But if you can come to Inspire, look for courses that offer experiential learning opportunities. And pick projects that you can easily talk about. There are clear outcomes and hopefully community partners or outside clients, because developing that stakeholder management approach and skills, time management within the fast-paced world of development in software, I'm thinking, right? That's incredible on your CV. But I'd like to mention Ripen as an organization that I'm not sure if it only works with students or anyone who's in an educational program in more general, but it essentially matches those interested to work on projects with companies that offer projects. So you open up a profile and you express your interest, you put your CV up there and what projects you might want to work on. And employers advertise projects they have, and you can be matched on the platform. And that's your open door to an experiential project that you may even be lucky to get some funding to Ripen. Nevertheless, you can have a portfolio of work that is on an open platform, and you can put that on your CV in your GitHub repository, but also you get access to a network of organizations and other students on the Ripen platform who would have been in the same situation. So that's your experiential learning plus the networking component in one.
Amazing. Yeah, and thanks so much, Claire. I see you just added the link there, so that's great. So everyone, please feel free to bookmark that and check it out later. And Claire, I think you had one more thing to add on this one.
Yeah, I either add to this one or the next, but I think a really important piece, and circling back to those mid-career professionals or even later career professionals that have a lot to offer within the STEAM professions, is getting some assistance and guidance on how to map skills over from what might be considered quite different from the STEAM professions. So I have come from a process background. So in my experience, when you tease things up enough levels, you find those common threads. And so working with a mentor or coach, working with HR resources to figure out how that translates over. And this threads back to Chris's earlier comment about all the other things that you've done that connect, that add. For example, a psychologist has experience with the biopsychosocial cultural frameworks. How might you leverage that in design, right? Or somebody who's worked in policy, and maybe it was social policy. However, that person has a really good understanding of business rules. That translates well over into business analysis. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for support, coaching and guidance to help people realize possibilities, to see what they've done to date and how that could possibly translate over, along with, lining up the passions as well, doing those things that, make you feel strong in the process of doing them. So thanks, Heather.
Yeah, no, thank you, Claire. And actually, that's a perfect segue to the next question, because the next question is on transferable skills. So throughout all of our lives, we've all picked up habits and abilities and skills through various jobs that help, build us up and make us who we are today. And, these skills certainly contribute to our success, the success of our teams, our clients, our organizations. And, sometimes when we hear like soft skills, I don't think of those really as soft. I sometimes think of those, for some people, those are the hardest skills to acquire, and they also make the most impact. So when we think about transferable skills, what do you think that some transferable skills are that a person can develop when transitioning into a career in STEAM, and that will really help support them into their journey into this field? And Patrice, let's start with you this time.
I think that's a great question. I believe that everything that we do is transferable. And I think that sometimes I don't know that we realize that everything that we do can transfer in some shape, form, or fashion, but everything that we do transfer in some way. And when I think about how it fits into that STEAM, that's just like it doesn't have to be STEAM related, but if it's soft or hard, there is a way that everything that we do fits into the next thing that we do. And so whether it is process related, it fits into design. Whether it's design related, it fits into, our next soft skill or our hard skill. But everything that we do helps frame our perspective. And one thing that I've learned is when I worked in corporate communications, and, in that moment, that's kind of what I worked in that moment. That was my industry. That's kind of how I thought. That's how I processed everything. And then when I transitioned over into corporate compliance and regulatory, it wasn't until I started working in, compliance and regulatory that I realized I needed to be able to communicate really well. And so I started working with a whole bunch of lawyers. I had no law degree, but I realized that they spoke a lot of legalese. And so I had to interpret all of the legalese into plain language for people to really be able to understand what they needed to do to get into compliance. And that's how I realized that was one of my skill sets. And so that was something that I took that transferred over with me. I didn't see it as a soft skill or a hard skill. I realized I transferred that over. I realized that I took something that was very simple, something I thought I did very well, and it was what I would call a business skill, and transferred that over into corporate compliance. And it worked very, very well for me. And I took those very complex consent decrees, and I was able to translate those into simple language and was able to diagnose problems and fix them. And then fast forward, I was able to do that same thing into corporate social responsibility, take very, very complex problems and solve them, and build stellar programs. And so although my career has transitioned into very different stories, everything I've done has really transitioned and transferred, and I've brought all of those skills with me. And I assure you, I use all of those skills into everything that I do today to build my programs. Everything. I use my compliance, I use my regulatory experience, I use my writing experience, I use my program oversight in terms of how I build out a program, I use my sustainability experience, I use my social innovation experience. Everything I've done in my 20 years plus experience, because I'm very young, I just kind of look like this, but everything that I've done, everything I've done in my experience, I really have transferred everything over, and I stopped putting buckets in terms of what's hard and what's soft. I stopped bucketing those things because I realized that sometimes my hard skills become soft, and sometimes my soft skills become hard depending on the problem. So that's just kind of my experience.
Yeah, I think it's all woven together to be the person that we are and how we show up in the world. And, I think all of us here and those that are listening in, you've taken time out to learn something. So I think we all have this growth mindset. So we'll just all continue to grow and to build and to add to our toolkit with experience. And yeah, I echo what you're saying, Sharon, that everything we do is transferable. Really appreciate that, Patrice. Thanks.
I think a soft skill is soft until it becomes hard, right? Like we talk about communicating being a soft skill until you have to deliver bad news. You don't know how hard delivering bad news is. And we talk about communications being a soft skill, but it's not it's not soft until you have to deliver bad news. Then it becomes hard. So that's why I try not to, I kind of remove the buckets. And so for me, it's like, I don't really look at like hard and soft. I just look at like, what is the expected outcome? And I'll work towards that and work backwards.
Yeah, I hear you there. And I just see Mary in the chat here saying that soft skills, it is a power skill. I love that too. Thank you, Mary.
Yes.
Appreciate the contribution there. Jana, let's go to you next.
I agree, but something that Chris said earlier resonated with me. Have a growth mindset. So, you know, as a mother, I bring a lot into my teaching, and I learned a lot from my kids as well as I take in my classroom to teach my kids. But in translating skills to another, there's a step that we are making. And once we come into a new career in science and engineering on a STEAM, like Chris put it, we don't have that confidence at first. So we may be afraid of making mistakes, and it takes a while to realize that everything we know and you know, the skills we have actually are very useful in STEAM. So the growth mindset allows us to say, it's okay to make mistakes because I'm actually a very fast learner, because I come with all this wisdom and grit that I have built prior to this point. So that skill of growth mindset, I think, is crucial. And I'm trying to build into my students in our undergraduate courses. There's a wonderful book that you may know. It's called The Mindset. Growth mindset, yes, which really explains how athletes have this problem. I think Chris used this example too. Once you get good at something, you feel like that's the only thing you can do, and making mistakes in other things that, or other new opportunities and projects is not accepted. I think that the better with my students, I convince them that mind growth set will help them later, the better we do in schools and later on in our careers.
Thanks, Jana. Oh, and thanks for sharing the book in the chat there. Thanks, Sharon. And Chris, let's go to you next.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say for anyone that's switching mid-career is just courage, right? Like it takes a lot of courage to make a decision at some point in your life that you're going to do something new. And you know, Dana, you use the word grit, and I love that word because it takes grit to get through life. And you know, that just to, you know, find those gritty moments, those things that we have chosen to sort of put our heads down and do, and find courage within ourselves to go and find a new community of people to spend time with, to go and find that new job, to go and find that new credential, to go back to retrain or upskill, all of that, to go to a new country. Like these things are so difficult to do. And I think, you know, to your point that was made earlier about, you know, people coming from another country and finding it difficult to have their credentials recognized. I wish there was a credential that we could have for just coming to a new country and interviewing in a new language, or going and doing marketplace work in a different language, because it is incredibly difficult. My parents are immigrants, and sort of hearing their stories is so inspiring. And yet somehow in work, that stuff's not, we don't get to talk about it because it's not a work skill. It's not something we can put on a CV, and that's a shame. So I just think like naming courage and finding times and things that we've done that are courageous lends itself so well to whatever you're going to do next.
Absolutely. And I think having hope for a better future, a better career, whatever it is, that certainly takes courage. And yeah, absolutely agree. Thanks, Chris. And sorry, Dana, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say resilience. And I see Mary
Yeah.
also put that in the chat. Yeah, it's great, and builds resilience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Claire, anything else to add from your seat?
I think if we're migrating over to advice in terms of people exploring, is one of the things that I've done when I think about, you know, career transitioning is really getting present to what my own limiting beliefs are towards exploring something new, right? So oftentimes those are not, you know, on the surface, and if they're not, then we're not in a place to address them. So coming from a space awareness around what my thought patterns around a new direction might be is really important, so that I can build that courage, so that I can develop that resilience and that curiosity and the courage that Chris talks about to explore something new. So I think that's a really important part of the journey as well, is, you know, what stories have I told myself about exploring a different profession? You know, I think there's I'll throw myself out there as an example. I might have gone into engineering when I was a young girl, had I realized that I didn't need to be as intimidated by math, you know. Yeah, Dan is nodding at me, right? So, you know, how can we as a community support one another in challenging some perceptions that we have out there, so that there's a greater openness and courage to explore new things. And so, you know, maybe you don't need like a degree in math to do something, to get into engineering. Maybe there's different paths, and show people what those different paths are, but get present to where your own mindset is at, because that's a key piece in terms of navigating everything else that you might explore. Oh, yeah, I choose to work with a coach, and it's been super helpful.
Beautiful share. Thanks, Claire. All right. Okay, so we're now down to the last question that we've come up with from our board, and certainly, in my opinion, a very important one. So I ask each of you, why is it important to have diverse representation, such as women, transgender, and non-binary people in STEAM? And Dana, let's start with you this time.
Oh, I could be talking forever. I'm writing a grant.
We have time, by all means.
And my hypothesis is that diverse teams build better software. Okay. And the reason is that the tech that we build really reflects those that build it, right? The design choices that are being made by the team who's thinking about a solution, right, would reflect their own makeup. So if we have a homogeneous team, the view of the world, if you wish, is narrower, right? So, and I'd like to think about diversity, you know, beyond gender, beyond race, but we have different cultural backgrounds, different experiences, different attitudes towards software because of the life we've had so far, like being an immigrant, you know. I cannot clearly describe the characteristics of an immigrant, because actually it's a rich profile, but we would perceive that the technologies that we build differently because of that diversity within us, right? And so therefore, if we want technologies to be inclusive and not excluding anyone, then we got to have teams that are inclusive, so that we are able, those teams develop an ability to understand the other's perspectives and reconcile those. And that skill is essential in understanding diverse end users out there. So software is so ubiquitous nowadays, and we design it to solve almost every possible and human challenge in our society. So therefore, we have a very, very diverse end user base. And to understand those, you need the capacity that a diverse team would build within the team. So maybe I hope I made myself understood on that relationship between team diversity and the products that we develop.
Yeah, and I think that word essential is just so, it sums it up so perfectly. Thank you. And Patrice, let's go to you next.
I don't know that I could say any more than what Donna already said. Honestly, I don't even know that I could add anything other than what she said verbatim. Everything that she just said is absolutely correct. I don't know what else to say other than I echo her sentiments. I completely agree.
Thank
The
you.
logic has to be built into the software. It absolutely has to be built in to the software. It has to be built into the teams. So I echo her sentiments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Patrice. And Chris, how about yourself? Anything to add?
Yeah, I like Patrice said, Dana, you did such a great job summing up so many great thoughts. I would just agree that, you know, I think when we think about diversity, we generally think, well, with diversity, we make better decisions because we get more diverse decisions. But there's so much research that's come out now that not only that, but they're actually better investments, they're better companies, they're more profitable. A study was done, 15 countries, over 1,000 large countries, and they found the companies that represented greater degrees of diversity financially outperformed all of the ones that would be more narrow in their profiles. And so there's just a lot that's coming out that way, and it's great to see something that we kind of intuitively might have hoped for actually sort of play out in real data. So yeah, I just would add that maybe.
No, perfect addition. Thank you. And Claire, anything else to add?
Yeah, as mentioned, I'm not really sure, what to add to the amazing thoughts that were already shared there. That's probably more to echo that, when you think about developing a product or service, it needs to reflect the people that it serves. I think that's a really important piece. And to add to what Chris said as well, diversity truly is a competitive advantage. We've got incredibly complex problems that we're all working together on in the world today. And diverse teams bring such a richness and depth of talent, heart, perspective, and innovation that I can't see anything different going forward, to echo what Dana said.
Yeah, absolutely. And an important conversation that will continue on beyond this webinar. And I know through Will, we have other topics coming down that'll dive a little bit deeper into this as well. And yeah, absolutely. So Maya, absolutely chime in with questions. That is that wrap up for the questions that we had for the panelists this evening. So we are going to pivot over to you, the audience. So please type them in the chat. I'll read them, and then we can kind of field them to whichever panelist feels, just to kind of answer the questions as they come in, whatever one they feel. So Maya, let's start with you. Whatever your question is, if you can just type it in there, and then I can just kind of voice it for you. I don't think it'll let you voice it because we're in webinar setting, not a meeting setting on the Zoom. Okay, so I'll look for, you have some questions in here, Sharon, I see somewhere. And I'm not sure, Charlotte, feel free if you're seeing the questions. I'm just going through all the comments. So if you're seeing the questions first, by all means, Charlotte, chime in with them. Okay, so one question here I see from Sharon. So are there any partnerships or connections that are being made with the Women's Infrastructure Network? I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that one.
Not familiar enough, I'm afraid. That's definitely something to look into.
Okay, so I don't think we have any answers for you on that one, Sharon, but as Claire said, we can look into that for you and circle back. We'll just make a note of that question here. And just a comment from Sharon as well to you, Dana, that she'd love to stay in touch. Inspire is doing great work. Feel free to send an email. And I'm not sure if you're able to see the email there.
Yeah, I copied it over and I'm created a draft email message already.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. And there's another question in here, an anonymous question. So there is not a specific focus on how STEAM is an actual life-changing vehicle to wealth, and that low-income racialized people, including immigrants, non-immigrants, homeless people, and people experiencing abuse, whether it's substance, mental, physical, are locked out of these opportunities en masse. So more of a comment there. I'm not sure if anyone has any additional commentary to add to that.
That's a long statement. I'm not sure whether I'm trying to distill the actual question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is certainly more of a comment here. So if anyone has anything to add.
Maybe I can comment. So the project we had with the Greater Victoria Coalition to End Homelessness was lucky enough, the students, actually they interviewed quite a few people off the streets, as well as people who had been on the street, but now they work in shelters. And one comment I heard from a shelter worker who used to be on the street, she said, I was given this opportunity to help others in an office as a volunteer first, and now there's some income. So I think this aligns with what we talked earlier. How can we help, minorities upskill, right? We give them an opportunity for projects to be empowered, right? So I think that any initiatives that try to create those opportunities would be incredible. Like this woman's life has changed, being able to come off the street and work for shelters.
Thanks for sharing that. And I see an earlier question here from Helen. So I'd like to think that the career development community tries to encourage people to think about how competencies from unrelated experience transfer to career positions. At least I do. I teach career development in the Camosun College Tech programs. If anyone has any good ideas about how to convince our students with this, let me know.
I don't know that I can answer that question. I just want to make a statement. I think it's hard to answer the question about competencies and how to transfer into career positions without knowing the individual. So for me, it's really hard to answer the question because it's really based on the individual's experience, their education, what they want to do, where they want to go, and then developing a learning path for them. So I just want to apologize. I think it's hard for maybe some of the panelists to give a direct response because they really just don't know the individual student, and it would be maybe given an assumption. And it's really hard to give a one size fit all for that situation. But I think there's so many programs that if you just offer the programs to the individual, I'm hoping that something piques that student's interest. If you just offer the programs and maybe just start there with just saying, have you, maybe offer 3 programs. Do any of these 3 pique your interest? If not, maybe offer 3 more, because there does have to be something internally that inspires that student to want the information first for them to take action. So I'm sorry, I feel bad that we can't answer it, but I feel like we need a little bit more information to give something a little bit more specific.
No, thanks for chiming in, Patrice. And there's another question here. Oh, is it Claire, something along the lines of subsidies for education? Is there something you want to speak on that?
I think it speaks to that earlier, longer comment. And Dan, I think, spoke to this as well, that I think there's opportunities to reduce barriers via cost or scholarship into opportunities for a variety of different groups. And I think as a community, educational institutions and organizations, there's a real chance to help remove that as a barrier for a lot of people who, come from lower income situations. So that is a key piece that was raised in that comment there.
Thank you, Claire. All right, I'm just trying to go through the Q&A and the chat with questions. So I'm just trying to toggle between the two to make sure I'm not missing any. Charlotte, by all means, if I'm missing any, just unmute and feel free to chime in. Thanks, Jessica. She's commented on the video question, so they'll be posted on our Will YouTube as well. So absolutely, this will be made available public. All right, and a comment here. So also I heard that George Brown provides education at no cost to specific programs to women in adverse situations and to formerly homeless people. It would be better if that program was expanded there and also at other schools. Completely agree. Thanks for sharing. Okay, another question here. So from Kathleen, for women who are wanting to start a new career after being at home with children for many years, how can they sell the life skills they have that are applicable to STEAM? Great question, Kathleen.
Oh, time management.
Yeah, right. Negotiation, all the things that you.
Oh, I've become much better at managing my time after having more kids. Like with 3 kids, I actually have time for myself, which is counterintuitive, but I do manage my time. So time management is one very sure, easily to say.
You're a project manager, right, Dana?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Entrepreneurial, because you have to
Entrepreneurial,
have a
yeah.
solution with little to go by.
Yeah.
Resilience.
I might also,
Grit.
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Communication skills as well, right, Dana?
Yeah.
Another organization I'd like to point to as well, and it speaks to exactly this, because the Minerva Foundation for BC Women in British Columbia here has a great program for women who are looking to return to the workforce after a chunk of time away. And it's a wonderful program that does help bridge women back into the workforce, even if that does involve a career change. So if you haven't heard of the Minerva Foundation for BC Women before, I would encourage you to explore it. The programs are amazing. I'm an alum myself. Yep.
Great, thanks for sharing, Claire. All right, I'm seeing a comment here from Sharon. So a number of the community schools provide amazing resources as they support community, especially newcomers. The Burnaby School District is doing amazing things in this area. Thanks for sharing. All right, we'll just do kind of a last call for questions. Oh, and I'm seeing here, Toronto District Board has a successful program for immigrants to connect, train, and provide many resources. Yeah, there really are. There's so many wonderful organizations that really do want to help. So it's just trying to filter through to find the right fit for you. Perfect. Thank you for sharing the link. All right, if there are no other questions, we will go ahead and wrap up. But before we go, I just want to thank each of you, all the panelists, for the rich conversation this evening, the light that each of you brought to this discussion. It's really heartwarming to hear each of your journeys into, to relate to, and if you can't see it, you can't be it, all of that. So thank you so much. And again, before we wrap up, I know Charlotte has a few closing remarks. We just have a few notes on some upcoming events that we want to share with you. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Charlotte. Thanks so much, everyone.
Okay, yeah, so we have a couple upcoming events that I want to mention. So next week on October 12th, the Saskatchewan chapter is hosting a webinar and virtual networking session. And then on October 19th, the Montreal chapter has a speaker series webinar about not letting your inner critic stop you. And then we also have our Women in Leadership Mentorship Program. The sign up is happening throughout the fall, and then the actual program runs from January to June of next year. And it's a virtual based mentorship program. Mentors and mentees meet about once a month. And I was a mentee last year and it was very impactful. It was an awesome experience. So I really recommend it to anyone. And you can find more info on that on the WIL website. And now I'll just hand it over to Claire.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. And thanks again to everybody. Thank you, Heather, for moderating this amazing group of panels, which I'm privileged to be joined by today. We have, as Charlotte's putting up there, our STEM Social at Moxie's Victoria on October 20th. Seats are limited, so we've already got a good number of registrants. So if you're interested, please register. I'm popping a link in the chat where you can go and do that. We also have on the iWIST Den, we have our book club, and our next book club is going to talk about boundaries. And is that ever an important topic? Let me tell you. Hey, speaking of skills you build from parenting, I'd imagine, right, Dana? Another one is one of our wellness wanders, which is a great opportunity for people to connect just organically. We're going to head to Whitty's Lagoon, grab a coffee, connect and chat. So we welcome you to join us there. Again, thanks so much to everyone, to Will, that's pulled this all together, and look forward to seeing you all soon. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I will pop my email in the chat here as well. And there it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. And just one final question from Sharon. She's curious which book your book club will be focusing on.
Oh, I've got to go find the precise title. Maybe Jennifer, who's on the line there, can grab it quickly and pop it in the chat.
Not, I'm sure it'll be on your site that she can follow up to see.
Yeah, actually, just give me 2 seconds here. Yeah, it's called Brave Boundaries, Strategies to Say No, Stand Strong, and Take Control of Your Time. And it's by Sasha Shilcutt, MD. And our book club is coming up on November 9th.
Awesome. Thanks for the share.
Thanks, Jennifer, too.
All right, that's a wrap, everyone. Thanks again so much. Really appreciate all your time and joining us today. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Bye for now.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry, Jessica, do you have that saved to the cloud? It's asking me, so I don't know if you've already clicked it.